Welcome to the Agent Odyssey. I'm Matt Wyman, co-founder and CEO of Acario. Acario provides simulation for agents, voice, text, headless. We make sure we find the problems before you put in production. Today, I have Harsha Vankayalapati, and Harsha is the co-founder and CEO of AgentWeb. They're a startup building autonomous growth agents, and they've got a huge, deep expertise in growth and marketing. And instead of my describing it, I'll hand it over to Harsha. Harsha, welcome, and maybe you can tell us a bit about AgentWeb.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Yeah, so a little bit about AgentWeb. So AgentWeb is building Emma, which is the AI marketing partner for growing startups. So founders are currently giving Emma their brand, their growth goal, and she builds the entire strategy end to end. So she does things like running ads, making content across things like newsletters or email outbound, and then does reporting as well. A little bit about myself. So before this, I actually had a computer science degree from Vanderbilt, graduated in 2019. From there, I worked at Microsoft for 3.5 years, where I worked on their digital store team. I actually helped build newsletters that they would send out to their digital store clients. So that gave me a lot of experience on the go-to-market side. After that, I went on to co-found a YC-backed startup. And so I've got experience on the enterprise marketing ops side, as well as like the quick and dirty early stage founder experience that's required when you're running a business 0 to 1. So got a lot of got a lot of experience across the board there.
I love the whole tech CEO crossover. It lets you go deep and come up and lets you orchestrate an entire system. I'd love to spend a few moments understanding more how you're thinking about building Emma, an agent, for these like first-class problems. I mean, these are hard things for humans to figure out, much less to go pull in a digital presence to go figure out. So maybe you can talk to me more about how have you set up Emma to go look at brand, look at playbooks, look at channels and strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's obviously work in progress, right? But I think that how we've figured it out is we take the experience that like our team has, right? So obviously I shared mine, but we have people on the team that have like led ads measurement at Meta, right? So they've got insider basically experience on how Meta operates their ads. Our CMO has actually ran the marketing campaigns for like AI SaaS companies before. He helped grow that business from 4 to 10 million, right? So there's a lot of experience that we bring to the table, which obviously is very required when you're building an AI agent that's verticalized like this. And I think that, ultimately we take that to build the playbooks, but like technically speaking, it's also a very hard problem too, right? Because you have to be I mean, this is people's brands, right? It's really how they're viewed online. And so there's a very, very high bar that people will internally have for any output that we bring to the table, right? And so that's why whenever we ship output, it's all very much results oriented. Like if this is really great and it's getting really great results, that's only when we can say we're doing a good job. And if we're not doing that, then we have to be very honest with ourselves, right? And I think that like meritocratic system, I think that exists inherently in marketing is also why, we have set up the way we view our content in that way.
Yeah, this is not about lipstick on the proverbial digital pig.
Exactly.
All these activities, though, are incredibly specific to each business. I mean, you can have two companies in the same space, the same vertical, with feature matrices that look nearly identical, and yet their brand expression could be vastly different and therefore appeal to different audiences. And so, I mean, it makes sense to me that you're pulling all your knowledge, you're pulling together all the sort of core foundational information, but how do you then bridge to that unique customer experience? How are you thinking about sort of onboarding context into your agent from each customer so it knows how to think about brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, how we're doing it today is that we will take in the brand information directly from the client's, like, for example, website, or we develop like a founder persona, right, from their like LinkedIn profile or any other socials that they can add. So that obviously at least gives us one layer of personalization. On top of that, I mean, we also like look at the market, right? So we do like deep research around what's going on in the market today. For example, like, we have clients that are in like the real estate industry, right? So we'll look and see like what do their competitors do for marketing today. It helps us get inspiration around like what has worked for them as an example. But also, like, we use that to see maybe there's blind spots that they have, right? So part of our experience that we're bringing to the table is like writing these really strong reports that we've done on the enterprise side that we can bring in, like, democratize to founders and give them, I mean, and also to our agent basically to give it really strong data to actually make decisions around. From there, we can actually make those strategy suggestions like, oh, this competitor X just didn't actually, execute on this specific channel, right? So that might be a weakness of theirs, and that's also an opportunity for you to maybe start, if they don't do outbound as much, maybe that's an opportunity for you to do outbound. Or their paid ads haven't been performing that well, that's an opportunity for you to actually run some paid ads to capture the market there. I mean, marketing is a very like wide industry, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
different ways to get to customer, and so it's all about figuring out like what works and also like what could work. And that's really how we're able to make those strategy determinations.
How do you think about that borderline for Emma between being a tool for you to use to work with your customers versus a tool for them to use so they can figure out their and chart their course?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's always a struggle even internally for us to figure
Yeah.
out because we have a few different options, right? We've got our done for you and done with you service models where we'll actually implement the agent and operate it for our clients. And so we do build it obviously like those features that we use for us to really ensure that we're getting the really great results. Because again, we live and die by the results we get for our clients, right? And so our incentives are always aligned with like getting the best output we possibly can. Now, the dream is obviously to have this agent do it autonomously, right? So if somebody just like logs in to Emma, for example, logs in, asks it, "Hey, what strategy should I do for my brand?" Then Emma would go out, figure everything out, like onboard the client directly, and then from there be able to actually operate almost like how we would. And maybe we have a human in the loop component where like we'll actually review the output to ensure that it looks good, or allow the client to review the output to ensure it looks good. And today, I mean, we're working on like an onboarding procedure that really takes in again our playbooks that we do and we run when we're doing like strategy discussions with our clients up front, right? And so that is something that we're just translating to the agent over time.
I'm It makes a lot of sense, but I also think it's reflecting a change in how we as founders are constructing our companies now. I mean, if you roll back to, SaaS, when SaaS was the thing, boy, you didn't want a sniff of professional service. You didn't want anything that looked like consulting. None of
Yeah.
that scales well. None of the numbers work. But now we're in a different mode where it actually kind of makes sense to create this more hybridized experience, and it's reasonable to do and it scales. So, I mean, do you have a strong opinion about where that goes, or are you kind of playing it by ear at this moment? I'm just curious how you're approaching it.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to ask me kind of my opinion on it, I think like I mean, Palantir sort of made this model very, very popular today, like the forward deployed engineer model, right? I think that AI has allowed that to really scale, right? Like a single forward deployed engineer, like a forward deployed person, which is sort of just basically a consultant, right? They can scale so much more. They can work with way more clients than they've ever been able to. And like the agents that are developed can augment really what those consultants are able to do, right? So you take the know-how and the understanding of the consultant or the forward deployed engineer and you bring that to a customer's table, and now they get the experience of having somebody that does the implementation and make sure that the results are really great for the price of whatever software fee the agent would typically cost, right? I mean, if you look historically, right, it seems like a lot of these really big ticket systems will either have an implement I mean, either or, right? They'll have like an implementation person. For example, like ServiceNow has plenty of consultancies that will just do their whole job is just to implement ServiceNow, right? And then those companies that implement ServiceNow have to then hire a bunch of ServiceNow engineers to
Yep.
operate the system, right? So yeah, they have a SaaS fee associated with it, but there's always been like an implementation fee and then probably like a service fee that you obviously like take on yourself. I think like the paradigm's shifting where now people can actually get baked in all wrapped together, both the implementation as well as the ongoing service, like wrapped into a single consultancy, right? Which would just be hiring the agentic business to run it for you. And then at the end of the day, like it looks better at the top line because you've got like clear results that you can just measure and say like, okay, this marketing, dollars resulted in this, spend that I got back, return on ad spend that I got back as an example, right? And so I think that like that just leans into a bit more of this like results oriented thinking of like, hey, this is actually, these dollars spent are resulting in this versus you having to take the upfront cost of just people on the inside operating the systems.
That makes a lot of sense. I also think it shifts us from thinking or trying to force people into cookie cutter roles at a more self-serve like experience. I mean, the ServiceNow example is perfect because that is a huge enterprise rollout. When you get these forward deployed engineers, you get these consultants who come in and figure out your business and how it should work. And it's a fantastic tool for all of that. But if you try to scale that to a different model, I think part of what you're describing really resonates strongly is this notion that uh, agents and all the different types of LLMs and AI give us the opportunity to have these forward deploys, I guess maybe marketers in your case, who can come in and understand the business and get it set up and dialed in and maybe come back every so often, but not have to be there every day. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, the agent picks it up and runs with it on the regular basis. And that hypothetically changes the math around what the costs are for scaling and what it looks like as you scale and how many customers you can. I mean, we're seeing the early bit, you're seeing the early bit. I mean, I think time will tell whether it fully scales like that. And I think the other interesting piece is that it it suggests that well, let me say it differently. As a founder, it makes me more motivated to have products that are unique to my customers as
Yeah.
opposed to products that are cookie cutter. And I think that is a huge opportunity. And it's part and parcel of what you're building. Like you just can't have the same brand for everybody. It has to be unique for each one. But then comes the next part, which is like, how do you make sure it stays on track? Because trust becomes the next problem as customers are using it and they're starting to like it. How do you make sure that that trust component is always there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to, I mean, if we work backward from the result, right? I think that obviously results are what give you the most trust. I would say, like ultimately, like if you're getting, you know, really strong click-through rates, customers are seeing leads just book time on their calendar, like the results at the end of the day is like ultimately what gives you the most trust. But like if you work backwards from that, I mean, there's steps along the way where you can win trust, right? So for example, before that, if your agent is spitting out information that like really resonates with the client, right? So we've had that experience before where clients will just say like, wow, like you guys are doing so much content for us that it just completely like leapfrogs our business, so like, to the degree that, I mean, we've had a client before that had the experience of like typically I think startups, and this is my experience too the last time around, was like very content poor, right?
Mm,
Like, there's a lot of like I mean, there's a lot of work to do in a startup, right? And like
yeah.
oftentimes go to market type work is like or specifically like one to many type go to market type work where you're like posting content on LinkedIn and like getting people excited about what you're building. That will fall on the wayside. Besides maybe like the occasional launch where you like launch your product and hope people see it. And so content poor is the default for most startups. Now, we're like shifting that paradigm to be like content rich. And instead of, one of the things that we're always going to try to fight up against is like just putting out AI slop, right? Like having just content that doesn't look great, but like it's just volume, so it doesn't matter. I think for us, like by being really focused and really having a taste component in there, we can ensure that the content just looks super great, drives really strong results. And then now it's like volume is there and quality is there, right? So like that obviously will then we've seen that win trust with clients too, just having them completely shift even how their go to market looks. And then like all the way working backwards, right? Like if the agent's running a research report that totally aligns with what the client believes about their own brand and maybe even teaches them something about the market that they didn't already know, right? I think that like immediately I've seen unlock trust for them. They're like, oh, actually, this could work super well. Or like even, for example, like making images or content, just like ad images, for example, that looks super great. I've seen that get people really bought in. That like, oh, actually AI can really do the job in a way that, I might have been able to do it marginally better myself, but like this is easily scalable, right? And I think that, I mean, walking up the chain, like these are the events that we've at least seen is when like clients have really bought into working with us long term. I hope that answers the question there around trust.
It
But yeah,
does. I think it's fascinating because what I'm hearing you describe is that trust that comes early with a product that works. So sure, I might be able to make something marginally better once, but in the time it took me to do it once, you've done it 10 times and they're so close that's fantastic, right? But then comes sort of the next question of like, well, wait, there are certain activities that even if it looks great, may not be my aesthetic, may not be how I want that phrase, may not be the way I want to approach that market. So then there's that next level, which I mean, arguably it's not trust per se, but still, if it was a human, you would term it as trust. Do I trust them to represent me in the market?
yeah,
So now there's that next step. Okay, it makes beautiful things. I trust it to do good work, but but is it making the right decisions for me?
yeah.
What about that layer?
That's a really great point. I think that's why like we might always have that, forward deployed component, right? Because I think like having
Mm,
a, like a spokesperson on behalf of the AI that can at least like interpret the results or at least tailor it to the specific client and say like, hey, like makes sense that you think like we've had an experience like this actually like just recently where we're running a set of ad copy for a specific product for one of our clients. They actually think it might be better to do another product that like the AI maybe didn't pick, right? And so the question is like, is the client right or are we right? Or is the agent right? Like, what's correct here? And I think having a person that can like navigate those more complicated type situations where it's not strictly like a zero equals one
sure.
situation or whatever, having it such that hey, like I can interpret the results, I can be the spokesperson on behalf of the AI, but I can also take your opinion into account too. Like maybe I translate that to the AI in a certain way to generate like for example, product X might not be the right way to go. Maybe product Y is a little bit better. I think that's why like a human face that like works as like, a person that can help sort of mitigate these kind of more ticky tack situations, I think is really where like where we come in, right? To help really bring a face to the agent.
You're also, I mean, you're also talking about human in the loop, which I want to get into in just a moment. But
Sure.
but there are externalities, right? You're also referring to the fact that there are externalities that the agent won't know unless someone puts them there, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
customer knows. Like so, your example of which product to highlight might have everything to do with a conference they just went to or an event they're about to go to. Like, hey, we're about to go to this event and it's a blah, blah, blah event. Therefore, we want the product that's best suited for that highlighted for the next 3 weeks. Agent wouldn't know that. How could it?
Definitely.
So you have to bring in these externalities. But that it sort of points at the character difference. We often use this phrase, broadly speaking, human in the loop. But I think you just did a beautiful separation in that there's this forward deployed person who understands and knows how to work with the system, who is interacting with it, and then there's human in the loop where there has to be a person there to help the agent move forward. And there is a character difference between the two. One is more of a decision maker, guide, co-pilot. The other one is more of a tester, for
Like a QA
lack of a
person.
better term. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. QA person, making sure it worked. Um, I think both are reasonable, rational, and needed today. But how are you balancing these at this moment?
Yeah, it's honestly very great question, and I've had my opinion change honestly on this,
Huh.
right? I
Tell me
think
about that.
so before I was of the opinion like, okay, well, AI actually probably always needs some human in the loop component. Like, okay, maybe people will evolve into QA, and like maybe we also have to include the ability for humans to like make, touch edits, right? Um, I'll give you a great example here. So like our ad images that we run, sometimes, I mean, AI will hallucinate, right? It'll like put in text that's just gibberish or like add smudges. And like maybe a human has to come in always to just really like highlight certain parts of the
Dial
text,
it in.
fine tune it. And like one option is obviously you send it back to the drawing board. You just type in a revision and hope that the AI spits out basically 90% of what, like, I guess I mean, 90% of the AI's work at this point, like, maybe gets there, but like the last 10% is super hard to make sure that it works super well, right? And I think um before I would have told you, like, yeah, we have to have an editor, like an image editor in our tool that allows people to just come in and just make edits. Or there needs to be like an approval and reject process that's always involved, right? Like the really traditional like QA role for people. But I've seen that, I mean, as these models get better, I mean, we're just seeing so many improvements that like reduce the amount that people really have to be involved, right? I think betting against the models improving is probably not the right way to go. I mean, we just saw like even like as of just yesterday, to be honest. Like, my CMO Matt, like he has always been like, the images are like 90% of the way there. I need 10% of the help. Maybe I just put it in like Photoshop or Figma or something else that allows me to make those spot edits. But like he was just able to make a bunch of templates and a bunch of like prompt work that's allowed these images to be super duper high quality. Like the logos look right, the text looks right, there's really no hallucinations like anywhere in the image, right? And I think um, it is a metric of how good can you get the agent to operate. And there's a lot of, prompting that's involved, obviously, but also like even just raw engineering to get it better. And I think that the models are also always improving. So I think I actually am more inclined to say, you know what, maybe human in the loop is a bet against the direction that AI is going to be going, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting. I, I'm curious with the executive hat on versus the builder hat on for a moment.
sure.
How do you think about that in terms of as you're going to market and you're working with potential new customers? Because you're communicating something very specific when you have those moments in your product versus when you don't, right? When those moments aren't there, and it's like, trust this button, you're going to click it, and the right thing's going to happen on the other side.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, putting the executive hat on. I mean, I think especially like when I'm having the sales conversations with folks, a lot of it is like buying into like myself or the team that we can at least get the job done on behalf of the clients. I think it's a little bit harder to like 100% stand behind the product today. I mean, we're obviously a small team, number one, but number two, I think like, and that's resulted in our product. I mean, it's not as mature as we would like. But AI is also not as mature as we would
I was
like,
going
I
to say,
guess.
that's the state of
Yeah.
play everywhere.
Yeah, right. So I think like part of the sale is like, hey, you're getting like agency level service from us, right? Where we're able to get you these agency tier results that you don't necessarily need to know how marketing works to get these types of results. We can come in, set our agent up, and like you're able to communicate with us, and then we use our agent just to do the work that we would otherwise do ourselves, and it just lets us scale up a lot. So that sort of full service agency approach. I think that like, again, maybe like human in the loop like is more for QA, whereas like the part that I was also alluding to, which is like being almost like a spokesperson for the I think that that is really kind of what people will be doing more so now than even like the QA side, because I think like, justifying what the AI did or taking the customer feedback into mind and then actually going back and like tuning the AI so that the results are closer to what people expect, right? Because I think, I mean, the ideal world is like, these agents operate how I would work with even like a vendor. So like I would work with them in Slack. Hey, I don't like your results. Can you go back and revise this? Whatever, right? Like the human in the loop shouldn't even be us. It should like theoretically even be them. But like that's more like a direct communication, and have opinions too, right? And that's where we might come in.
Actually, that's a whole nother fascinating area where the agent might be able to express some opinions and
True.
push back a
Right.
little bit. But I do think it changes the character of the product, right? It changes the character of the business. If you're more like a digital employee, so to speak, from the outside, it's like, oh, I'm going to have an interaction with Emma. Emma's going to go get the work done versus Emma's helping me, but I have to go through and understand all the different pieces of all the different work that could happen so I can help sequence that everything happened the right way. It's a fundamentally different company, it seems to me. And I think people are laying bets right now. on one path or the other. And because it changes the roadmap, it changes how you talk about it, it changes the conversations with the customers and the relationship to them. And yeah, I resonate strongly with the models keep improving and there's more and more opportunity. And I think that it's actually part and parcel of the forward deploy as well. Because if the product's not trying to be cookie cutter, then you have the opportunity to organize it to solve the problems, which means you have the opportunity to be more specific.
Yeah.
Do you think that as we go further down this road, you see Emma becoming the all-in-one to try to solve all these problems, or do you start to see that break up and have more purpose, sub agents or whatever that your customers interact with on elements to work on the design, to work on a campaign? How do you see that playing out?
Um, so I think my opinion on this is subject to change, I would say. But I think today, like encapsulation makes the most sense, right? Like you would communicate
Yes.
with, like let's say I'm working with a marketing agency, for example, right? I'm typically not going to like talk specifically to the designer, or I'm not going to talk to the media buyer or whomever else would be on their like agency team. I'd probably be talking to like my point of contact or like an account executive or something at the agency that I share like what I want. They take that, translate that across their team to get the results that I'm expecting, right? And I think that like that single point of contact where like Emma is the person that they reach out to that like understands them like as a person, but also understands their brand at a high level, understands like at a higher order, like what needs to occur for the brand. And then obviously on the internal, like we do recruit like these specific agents or sub software packages or whatever to actually get certain work items done, right? Like that project management component, I think is handled by either the agent or us or some combination, which I think is leaning more agent as time goes on. And then the agent will then recruit, like, for example, if there's a point solution that makes the most sense, right? Like, oh, this media buying tool just like is the best one in the market. Like, let's use that actually as our mechanism for buying up ad space on Facebook, for example, right? Um, that's the route we're seeing work really well as like resulting in really great results for our clients. Like we take the best in class for every single type of work that we do, and we're constantly always testing, right? Like if we think that a lead generation tool like a cold outbound tool is actually better than the one we're using, we'll test it, see that it's actually doing better, make the swap, and then now we're using the best one, right? And I think um, that will always make it so that like we're not competitive with anyone really, because
Yeah.
we'll only rebuild something from scratch if we think that like what's on the market is like just generally bad or it doesn't fit our clients' needs. Like we'd prefer honestly to use someone else's either product or service that we basically can service as the person who gets buy-in from the clients, gets buy-in from the type of buyer that we're looking at. And for them, there's a benefit too, because I mean, usually the founders are not going to even know, like, oh, actually, I need to run a newsletter for myself. Like, that might be like they don't know that, right? That's where they come to us to really answer that question for them. Like, what exactly do they need to be doing for go to market? And then we do the job of going and recruiting like the best newsletter tool or like building the newsletter ourselves, which is like what we've chosen to do, right? Same thing is true for SEO or lead generation or paid ads, etc. So for the point solution side, we're a beneficiary, like we benefit them because they don't have to go out and market to these people and convince them that actually they need this tool, right? We basically do that on their behalf and we just make sure that the job gets done, right? And so that's been how our model has looked even internally, and it's been working super great so far. Like we have a few partners that we work with that I mean we pass them business and they help us actually service our clients, right? Which has been a win-win for both.
It is amazing because you're fundamentally an agent as a consultancy, and the sub agent model would require the client to have to understand every little aspect of how everything works. And the whole point of this is, you know, people can't know everything. They need
Right.
to have, they know the goal, they know their outcomes, but knowing all the details and making those selections is exactly where that value comes in. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But it does raise the question. I do always ask this about, okay, so what is the human skill? Like, what's the thing that we all need to go do more of, advance, get better at? so we can better deal with this world of AI and intelligence that's around us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I I will parrot like opinions that I've heard before, and I also have seen this to be true as well. Where like, I mean, I heard Anton from Lovable say like they look for generalists, right? That they can
Mm,
augment, like the AI can augment generalists a bit more than even specialists, at least on their team, right? And I think that I share that opinion. I've seen that to be the case, even within our own team, right? So, like for example, Matt, our CMO, is like a generalist marketer. Like he understands um, all the different parts of marketing, right? And so we can use AI or tools to actually help us generate great results for our clients, but he's got exposure across the board, right? Fong Fong, our CPO, is a generalist on product, right? Like she's able to understand like how to take client feedback, translate that into like product decisions that allow us to, go wide with our agent, right? And then Ray, our CTO, is a generalist when it comes to tech, where he's able to make decisions on the tech side that, I mean, one is great on security, really great on data parsing, really great on like data pipelining, right? Getting the right data to our agent. And then also even decisions on the agent side, right? Making sure that the agent, like the agent engine is running well on the best tools and like, we're using the best models that are available to get the job done, right? I think that and I've always had this opinion even from going through YC that like it's very similar to like the quote from like Ratatouille, I guess, where like anyone can cook. That's one of the famous quotes from that movie. And I think like I mean and the point of it is like it's not that anyone can cook, but like the best cook can come from anywhere, right? So like
yeah.
your unique life experience and all the different skills that you have can always like result in like a really great um, you know, I guess the sum is greater than the parts situation because I mean I've had some small experience on design and now like with AI and also with the work that we do, like I get to tap into that and like make meaningful contributions that maybe a specialist would have to do prior, right? And I think that same thing is true on tech and same thing is true on like go to market decisions or sales decisions. Like as many skills and knowledge that you can eat up is just going to be super important because I think like being a jack of all trades, especially when like you can recruit agents that can be really specialized in one direction, I would say that that is really the strong, like the strong type of quality that I mean I would look for if I was to work with somebody, but also like I think is the one that's going to be the most successful in this coming age.
Just to pick at this a little bit, do you
Sure.
think it's the flexibility to go horizontal, or is it the pre-knowledge that you have that you've already established that? And I know that you have to have the curiosity to go horizontal to go get it, but there is a little bit of a moment. Like, do you look for the person who's most curious and able to go out that way, or do you think it's more about like having a thin, and I know veneer sounds bad, but like a veneer of understanding across many areas? What do you think you're looking for
Mm.
there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would say like I would say curiosity is always going to be important, like willingness to learn, right? Because I think like especially the space we're in changes so much, right? Like I just was on a call with somebody um yesterday that was telling me about a bunch of AI tools and releases that happen that like completely just change the game of like what we are able to build, right? And I think like if somebody has long-term experience, if they claim they have long-term experience in AI, for example, like unless it's like deep ML experience where they worked with neural networks like before all this LLM
Certainly.
craze, I believe that, of course. And I mean, I've done projects in that world, right? So I understand. But I think like if you're like I'm a deep LLM expert, it's like I don't know, like that. It changes every week, right? Like Claude just released a bunch of new things. OpenAI has released a bunch of new things, right? And I think
Yep.
you can't be an expert. And there's just so much data and news that's coming out, right? So I think like the curiosity to like always want to learn and like what's the new thing that came out, does this change our paradigm, does this improve what we can build? I think on the tech side that curiosity is really important. I think though like for a business facing person or somebody who is, um, I guess not like who functions as like writing the business logic, right? For these AIs, like they have to have industry experience. Just because I think like AI is only going to learn more and more. Like it's going to become like OpenAI is pushing, and I mean OpenAI plus everyone else, I guess, is pushing their models to be more generalists. Like, I mean, AGI is like their goal, right? And I think um as a result, like unless you have deep industry knowledge about, like, for example, in our case, our team has deep industry knowledge in marketing. But if you have a team that's deep industry knowledge in sales or like cybersecurity, right, as an example, I think that that provides you that moat that will like prevent you from getting just eaten up by like OpenAI or someone else, right? So I think like it actually depends on your role in the business.
And it also, I'm hearing notes of willingness to be a generalist. There are a lot of folks who have wanted to be narrow, and makes lots of things easier if you can just say I do the one thing and I don't have to worry about the rest. But there's that willingness to go horizontal, and pick up those other skills and use those other skills and the trust that you can actually do so. Um, but I think that's a great point. And the kind of businesses that I think more and more are showing up are the type like you're describing in your own, where you need those folks to be flexible to actually pull it all together with the agents. Harsha, thank you for a wonderful conversation today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, this is great.